Hi everyone. Today we learn about file input and output in Python. File input and output is the process of reading and writing data from files and is an essential part of how computer programs work today because it enables us to keep track of what we've done before in the application and not just like start over every time we run the code. So let's learn how to read and write data from files in Python. So let's take, for example, we want to write some data into a text file inside of our code. What we just need to do is use the with open syntax. So with then open. So with open states that okay, open is a function that takes in the name of a file to open and then the format to open the file with. So let's say we are trying to open a file, let's say name.txt, and then we're trying to read the content of the file. So let's say as file. So now I can say file dot read. I can just say data equals file dot read, and I can print data. So what's happening here is I am stating that okay, as soon as you open a file for me, I want you to like store it in a variable. So this open function takes in the name of the file to open and returns it to me as a variable. So I'm saying open this file and store it in a variable file. So anything I want to do with the file, I need to use this file variable to undo it. Like if I want to read the file, I'll just take in the file variable and read it. If I want to write it, I'll take in the file variable and write into it. So the way I'm integrating, the way I'm connecting with this file using this file variable. The file variable can be anything I want. It can be data. Then I can just say data.read. It can be name. I can say name.read. So it's just like common to use the file because we're handling a file actually. So for now, I'm trying to read a file called name.txt. But now we don't have the file here yet. So let me just create a name.txt file and see if we can actually read what's in the file and show it in our terminal. So let's say name.txt. Let's say Diary. And now when I run my code, it should show the contents of this file in my terminal. So now you can see so anything that is inside of this file is going to read it and show it in my terminal because I'm reading this file. Now I can change it to my name is. Now when I run my code again, we should have my name is Diary. So now we've been able to read a file and like print it out to our terminal. But now when we are opening a file, we should be showing the format. So by default, when we don't pass in the format to our file, we are just telling the file to open as read mode. So I'm telling the file that okay, open this file for me, I want to read it. That's because we didn't provide any arguments. But now to change like the type of the way we open the file, we just need to provide a second argument here to say W. So W is for write, like I want to write into this file. So when you open your file in Python, you need to tell like the Python interpreter that okay, this is what I want to do with this file that you are opening for me. So if you don't pass it in the second argument, it will just assume that you want to read the file. But then when you pass in the argument and you choose R, then okay, it now knows that okay, you really want to read this file. It's now sure. But then when you pass in W, it's stating that you want to write into the file. That means I am not opening this file because I want to read it. I'm opening this file because I want to write something into this file. But then there's also the append method. But we'll get to that in a moment. So now when we are writing into a file, we can't use the dot read because then there will be a problem. It's because we told the computer that I want to read this file, that I want to write this file, and now we're trying to read it. So that's like contradicting itself. So when I run my code now, you can see it should be showing like an error, not readable, because we told it that I want to write, and now we're trying to read because it is always an error. So let's change that to write. Let's set this to write. So let's say file dot write James Gordon. And now when I run my code again, it looks like it does nothing. But if we check my name.txt file now, you can see it has changed to James Gordon. But I should change it to something else like Dave. When I run my code now, it should have changed to Dave. So now we'll be able to write into the file. But here you can see every time we run the code for this write, it changes what is there. Like it deletes what is there before and add something new to it. But sometimes we don't want it to overwrite what is there before. We want like to add it to whatever is there before. So then we use the append method. So to append, we use the A instead of W here. So here we use A, and then that means we want to append to whatever is there before. And now we just add to what is there in the text file before. So now let's say James. Now when I run my code again, we should have James as part of the names. Now when I come here and change this to John, when I run my code now, you can see John has been added. But now you can see it's adding them to the same line, and this will become it's not really readable when you begin to append things like this. So you can use what is called the new line character. So what it does do is use the backslash and then the n. So that means this is like telling us that after you enter whatever it is that you want to enter inside of like the text, like the John, you need to go into a new line. So that means, let me just delete everything that is here currently. Come back here and say, now we have John. You can see here we have John. But now when I come here again and change it to something else like Dave, and I run my code again, here you can see it has entered a new line, and now we have Dave. So it's now begin to enter a new line every time we run the code. Now you can begin to imagine this being applied in the instances of like trying to keep track of your shopping, your grocery shopping list. So let's try to do something like that here now. So we have like 3 things. When you run the code, we want to be able to read our grocery shopping list. Sometimes we want to be able to clear it, like we are done with the list, want to like delete everything that is in the list. Sometimes we just want to add to what is already there before. So let's do all that using file input and outputs and a Python code. So let me delete all of this. Say first we want to use a function, so it will be much more easier. So let's define a function to, no, not inside of here actually, inside of my file.py. So let's remove all of this. Let's define a function to write into the file. So let's say write. So now to write into the file, we want to be able to write like a new entry. So whenever you like enter a new value into your code, like you want to add some new values to your grocery list, we want to be able to now call that function, provide the new value that I want to add to the grocery list, and then to just add it to the file. So let's try to do that. So in this one, we'll take an argument. So let's say entry. So we just call a function with the new value that you want to add to your grocery list, and then to enter into the file. So now let's say with open grocery .txt. Now we want to write into the file, so we use the W format. So W right here. So with open grocery as file, and we want to just write the new entry. But now we don't want to write actually, because if we keep using the W, to keep overwriting what's there. So now we want to just use append instead. So we'll change this to A for append. Now let's say file dot write f string, open and close brackets, entry, then the new line \n. So it enters a new line anytime we enter a new entry for the grocery list. So now after that, we want to just print your content. So we want like a function to also print all the values of the grocery list. So let's write a read function. So let's say def read. This time we don't need any argument because we just want to read from the file. So let's take in this and say with open grocery.py.txt actually. But this time we don't need to pass in an argument. So if you want to use the second argument, we just use the read, right? But if we don't pass in any arguments for the second one, it just assumes that it's going to be the read argument. So we can just leave this out and it will still work exactly as we want. So let's say as file, and now we want to read. So let's say print file dot read. right? So now the next one is to just like overwrite the old stuff, like delete everything in the list. So we have another function for that too. So let's say define clear, like to clear our grocery list. So let's say clear. It takes in no arguments also. So let's just write with open grocery dot txt. Now we want to write because we want to overwrite whatever it is that is there. So now as file, and now we just say file dot write an empty string. So this should work fine. Now let's begin to write. Let's first test the right and the right entry. So let's say inputs. Let's say entry equals inputs new entry. So now we want to call the write function, say write, and then entry. And then we also want to call read to now show the latest contents of our grocery list. So now read. So when I run my code now, it should ask me to enter a new entry, and then it should show what is currently inside of my grocery list. So now when I run python file.py new entry, so let's say apples. Now it's showing that I have apples in my grocery list. Now when I run again, let's say grape. Now you can see I have apples and grapes. Even though I'm starting my code over and over again, it just keeps remembering that okay, I've done this before, I've done that before. So when I run again, let's say bananas this time. Now you can see we have apples, grapes, and bananas. But as soon as I call the clear function, it's going to delete everything. So now let's actually make it much more intelligent, like checking for what we want before we actually begin to call these functions. So let's say an if condition first. So we first getting an input. So let's say action equals inputs action. So now we check the action to determine what to do next. So let's say if action equals action equals write, or let's say entry or new entry actually. If action equals new entry, we want to be able to create, like, get new input for the new entry. So let's say new entry equals input new entry, then we want to write new entry. But else, so if the action is not new, is not new entry, then we want to check if it's to just read the contents of the grocery list. So let's say action equals read. So if action equals read, we want to read and then stop. Then else, if action is not, if action does not equals let's say elif actually, if action does not equals new entry, or does not equals read, let's check if it equals like clear. So let's say elif action equals clear. So if it's clear, we want to just clear the old text file. So let's say clear. So we call the function, and now let's see how it works. So let me restart my code again. Now I guess we have an error here. Yeah, equals. So when I run my code again this time, you can see here we have action. So let's say action equals new entry. It's not doing anything. That's because the new entry is different from the one I have in the code. The one I have in the code is just like space. So let me just try again and say new entry. Now you can see it's asking me for the new entry. Let's say oranges. Did nothing. It just added to the file. So let me run my code again and say this time I want to read what is in my grocery list. Now you can see it has printed everything for me: apples, grapes, bananas, and oranges. But now let me see how to clear everything. So let's say Python then clear. Now when I run read again, everything is gone. As you can see, it's all gone. So now let's make this continuous. Like I want this my code to keep asking me for what to do over and over again until I choose that I want to stop running the program. So let's take, for example, you have like an application on your phone. It continues to run. It's always there running until you choose to close it. So let's do the exact same thing right here. So let's say we want to use a while loop to make this forever. So let's say while true. So we have an infinite loop, but the only time we want this to stop is when the user says exit. So when action equals exit. So let's come back here and say elif action equals exits. Now we need to break out of the function. Break. Now else, that means if the action does not match anything that is here, it does not match new entry, read, clear, or exit, then we need to tell the user that okay, whatever you typed is not correct. So let's say else print invalid inputs. Now let's try to run our code again. Now we have action. Let's say new entry. Now you can see it's asking me for new entry. Let's say apples. It's asking me for action again. This time let me say read. I want to read what's my grocery list. We have only apples. But now this time let me say I want to write a new entry again. So let's say new entry. New entry again. So let's say bananas. Now when I run read again, we have bananas and apples. So even though I exit, now I just need to type exit, and now my program will stop. So I can run it again and see I want to read, and I can see I want to clear, and then everything is gone. If I say read again, it's all gone. But now I can see RAED is still invalid input because the read is not correct. But now when I say READ now, nothing, because the whole thing is gone. So now we've been able to make like a simple grocery list manager inside of our command line interface that continues to run until we tell it to stop. So now let me say exit. Now we've learned how to use file input and outputs inside of Python.